anyone or anything that you consider a soul is truly a strand of that which we are. And the reason that these strands of consciousness manifest in physical form is to come to a polarized environment for the sole purpose, SOLE, of expansion of consciousness.
Welcome to The Reluctant Medium, where we cover the gamut of out there conversations. With an open mind and a curious heart, we want to talk about it all, from psychic phenomena and energy medicine to beings from other star systems and out-of-body experiences. You'll find a great balance between grounded science-backed topics and others that science hasn't quite caught up to yet. I'm your host, Dr. Maria Rothenburger, a psychotherapist by trade and a reluctant spirit baby communicator. And hey, even though I'm a medium, I'm not buying everything folks are selling. I just have a voracious appetite to know more about what I call the world of the weird. Join us on your favorite podcast platform or watch on YouTube at The Reluctant Medium. I'll see you there. Hey there, welcome back to the Reluctant Medium podcast. I'm Dr. Maria Rothenburger, your host for the podcast. And today I get to talk with David Strickel and his team, folks from the other side, souls from the other side, and I might be using incorrect verbiage. I can't wait to hear actually David speak about this process of channeling and who he's connecting with, et cetera, et cetera. David, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
Oh,
and I was going to say they use they them pronouns, which I've never said before, but they actually do.
Fantastic. Love it.
Because they're not a gender.
Yeah. That makes total sense, doesn't it? I cannot wait to hear about this process. I have been looking for it as soon as your team outreached me. I was like, yes, I haven't had a channeler on my podcast yet. And I'm so fascinated by it. I'm wondering about the process, how it's different from mediumship and psychic readings and all those things. And then stay tuned, listeners or watchers, for the end of the show, because or the last part of the show, because that's when David's going to be channeling his team for us. So, all right. But first, let's touch base with, who are you? And how did you come to do this work?
My name is David Strickel, and I'm a channel of source consciousness. That's the elevator tagline, right? So I first of all, I believe that we all have this. We all have source in us. And I refer to the power that creates the entire universe, the energy of creation, as source. I'm certainly open to anyone referring to it any way they want. You cannot offend me. There's no right or wrong with any of this stuff, but I just have come to know it as source. I did not always know it that way, though. It was just something that just dropped into my mind as a child, and I referred to it internally as my knowing. And again, I think everyone has this. I do think our matrix of beliefs across humanity works it out of us very early. And we're taught that we're supposed to go to school and pay attention to school. If we're religious, it's what religion is, whatever our religion is, what our parents and culture teaches us. But I was largely left to my own devices as a child. My father left when I was 6. My parents did not have a good marriage. I was pretty much ignored as a child. I was supposed to be the daughter that saved my parents' marriage.
Boy.
Oh, well, that didn't work out. And so my father left when I was 6, went on and started another family. And my mother announced that she never wanted to be a parent, although she fought for custody of my brother and I to get back at our father. And then she never wanted to be a parent, and therefore she wasn't a parent after that. So from age 6 forward, I wasn't parented. Not really, not at all. And I really learned to depend on this inner knowing to get me through life. And so this inner knowing really led me to question a lot of things. I was not a great student because it really led me to question our education system. I was asked to leave Sunday school very early on because I questioned too much there. And I was very curious. I questioned a lot, and I saw the world very differently than most people. And with this knowing, though, as a teenager, I did start to fit myself back in because I wanted to be popular and I wanted to have fun and I wanted to have the teenage experience. I didn't want to be the weird woo-woo spiritual kid. So I kept all that stuff hidden, and I taught myself how to function in society. And it took time to do that, but I did that successfully. And I grew up poor. And one of the big things for me very early on was growing up poor. I had to figure out how to not be poor. And I was around money. My half sister, my stepmother, my father married someone that had a lot of money. So my father's life and my half sister's life was very different than our home life. And I even had cousins that had money. So I had this all around me, but my brother and I and our mother were a minimum wage household. My father paid very minimal child support. And so we were the poor people of the family. And I remember in high school understanding what we now call law of attraction, that I could manifest money. And I lived in high school like one of the rich kids in town. I drove a brand new car. I had nice clothes, fancy watch, all the stuff that I thought was supposed to make you happy as a teenager when you're poor. I manifested that stuff, and I carried that into my adulthood. And I always had this knowing with me, but I really, for my teens and in my 20s, even through my 30s, really kept it hidden. That's why I love the title of your podcast, The Reluctant Medium, because I was very reluctant to share my woo-woo side with anyone. I thought it was weird. I judged it. I judged other people that were into it. I thought, I'm not like them. I don't have a ponytail. I don't wear Birkenstocks. I'm not hanging out, all of that stereotypical stuff, that I judged as spiritual. So I kept it hidden until I just couldn't anymore. And I went to psychics. My 20s and 30s, I went to see a lot of psychics to discover, what was different about. And I finally met someone, my late 30s, named Hazel Burley in Casadega, Florida. And she told me that I was a channel and that I was an excellent channel and that I needed to share this with the world. I didn't want any part of that. It helped to hear what I was and what was going on, and what this knowing that would draw. I just understood everything. I understood how humanity operated. I understood, what made people tick and how creation occurs and all of that. And I used it to my advantage. I was a very successful, even without a formal education, a very successful corporate executive for many, many years, because I knew how to use this to train people to make money. And so that worked for me. That money, flowed up to me. So I was successful financially, but I was really struggling internally with keeping this stuff to myself, because there were a lot of things that I knew and a lot of things that I solved in my own life that I knew I could help other people solve that I just couldn't do in my professional world. I could teach you how to be successful, selling and making money, but I would hear everyone else's problems about everything else that I just couldn't, get involved with because it wasn't appropriate in a professional setting. I didn't want HR calling me saying, "What are you preaching to your staff?" Yeah. So I kept it hidden. And I really, in my 40s, had this huge turning point where I started meditating. And after I was told that I was a channel, I was guided to Abraham Hicks. First of all, I know everybody loves Abraham Hicks. Who doesn't love Esther Hicks' channeling of Abraham? And the reason, and I was reluctant about that as well. And when that finally really hit me, I really consumed it, because Esther's channeling of Abraham made channeling seem not so weird for me somehow.
Yeah.
It just felt like home. Like, wow, this is what I've been getting my whole life, and now someone else is speaking this as well. This feels really right. So I really consumed that for a while. And I got to a point in my meditation pretty early on where I had what is referred to as a Kundalini awakening. I had no idea what that was. This was around 2010. So I was already in my early 40s. So it's around 41. So I'm having this Kundalini awakening. I'm meditating, and I have this energy eruption at the base of my spine that sort of electrified me. And I'm still electrified to this day with it. It's crazy to describe to someone that hasn't had the experience, but it's this powerful energy that zaps through me, and it will jolt me sometimes. I've gotten a lot more comfortable with it over the years, so it doesn't jolt me like it used to, but it's still there. It's still present. And I know when I breathe a little bit, do just a little bit of silence, zoom, it's just right there. So that was a big turning point for me, having this Kundalini experience. Again, I didn't know what it was. It's just happened. Years later, I started hearing about Kundalini energy and what that really was all about and all of that. So after that awakening period, my life really sort of sped up, and I started changing a lot of things about my health and about my living situation and my relationship and all of these things. And the last frontier for me was that high-paying corporate job where I was really stuck. And I was stuck in a belief system that, even though I knew that I could manifest money since my teens, I was manifesting a very good income against all odds with no education, no formal education. And I was afraid to leave it. So in 2017, I started 2014 to 17, I started teaching myself to write and speak, having been inspired by Esther channeling Abraham and others. And in the teaching myself to write and speak it, I started writing my first book. It's called The Stream, Eternal Wisdom for a Better Life. It came out in 2018. And the speaking part of it wasn't like what I had heard from Esther as far as her experience or others' experience. It was really unique to me, and that I had the knowing that would drop in, and that worked very well and was very clear. And the writing was okay. It's sort of like you have to learn to regulate what's dropping in, because it's not this stream. I call it the stream, but it's not really the stream of information that flows in like a download that's coming through. It's sort of like I will think of something in that state, and boom, here's the entire universe. And of course, we're very, yeah, I mean, trying to even wrap your mind around eternal wisdom in a human mind, which I'm still channeling through a human mind. We're limited to my intellect and vocabulary, certainly. And making sense of all of that, I've created words and terminologies and things like that because there just are no words for a lot of what I'm getting. And I had to teach myself to speak it, because I knew that if I spoke it, it would have a lot more impact for people. I didn't know how I was going to do that, but I knew I needed to teach myself to speak it. And that took a few years to learn to speak it. And so now I can speak it. But what I did in 2017 is I started the Stream of David podcast. And that was the first time I ever channeled for anyone other than my voice recorder on my iPhone, ever. I never saw, because there was nobody in my life that wanted to hear it. Everybody in my life would have been like, you're doing what? And what are you? And what is this? I didn't really know anybody that was into this stuff. So it was very internalized. So I spoke it into my iPhone. I taught myself to do it. Then I started the podcast, which was recorded back in the day in 2017. It seems so long ago now. I would record myself channeling, and then I would edit it, and I would have to edit a lot because there would be these big blanks, of dead air. And I would put it all together. And if you go back, that first episode's still out there. A lot of people go back to the very beginning of my podcast and listen all the way through. But it was very different than it is now. I've definitely gotten better at channeling now, where I can have a real conversation with someone in real time and really provide value for the listener. So that's sort of the whole journey, how I got to where I am now. Oh, and by the way, in 2018, I quit my job and started just doing this full time, having no idea how I was going to make a living. I just trusted I thought, well, my whole thing is TYA, trust your abundance, TYA. And if I'm trusting my abundance, this was the last thing I was holding on to, was the corporate job. And I had the podcast already, and people were starting to find out, he's a VP and a, director in our publicly held company, and he's doing what? So that wasn't going to work for very long, probably. So I created my own exit from that, and I resigned. And it's all worked out since then, beautifully.
Oh my goodness. And I thank you for saying what TYA stands for, because I didn't know it was an acronym. Trust your abundance. I need you today. Yay. I'm so glad you're here. I'm sure lots of people need you today.
No accidents, right?
No accidents. No accidents at all. Thank you for being here for all of us. And I'm thanking your team on the other side right now too. Okay. This is fascinating. Thanks for sharing your story. And I am curious how it is different. The work that you do, how is it different from what other folks know as mediumship or psychic awareness or those kinds of things, tarot readings? How is it different than that?
Well, I don't know that it's terribly different. I think that we are all connected to source, and we are all connected to one another. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we're all here to do, even though we all have source within us, we're not all here to be mediums or channels. We're not all here to be singers or artists. We all have these different talents about us, right? Mm-hmm. And I do not consider myself a psychic medium. Somebody has described me as that before. It doesn't bother me to be described that way, but I feel like a psychic medium is someone who is tapping into something specific, another person, or living or dead, and channeling that specific individual. I don't find myself doing that often. I have done some of that. I have just started saying this publicly. I'm trying not to get myself in trouble. But when I write my books, I specifically tap into the energy of Wayne Dyer, because I like Wayne Dyer's writing.
I cannot believe you just mentioned that. What? I was going to ask about a Wayne Dyer thing. Never mind. Okay.
You're very tapped in. So that may have been why you were thinking Wayne Dyer. I really loved Wayne Dyer's energy and his vibe. And I specifically am not trying to copy Abraham or be another Abraham. I don't think that there's a need for that. So I really wanted the Stream of David to be its own thing. And I set that intention. And I really did cut off all other learning from everyone else when I started doing this, not because there wasn't value in it. I think there's certainly value in learning from all of these folks, but because I wanted the stream to become its own thing. And it really did. It's really unique, and it really is its own thing now. And it really has a place in the world. And that doesn't mean that the others don't. It just has its own place for someone who's there on their learning journey. So as far as mediumship goes, I've had that experience of calling up that energy when I write. And my editor, I've written 2 books now with the same editor. In fact, she's a co-author in the second book. I sort of was self-deprecating about my writing. Again, 10th grade education from Louisiana public schools here. And she says, no, your writing is brilliant. Your writing is wonderful. I said, okay, you don't have to tell me that. She's a ghostwriter also. She says, I didn't change much of your writing at all. And I know that's because I tapped into that energy, that vibe. And that's why the writing is as good as it is, because I tapped into that. And the second book, I think, is much better in terms of writing than the first book. And there were 5 years in between these two. So I do that. And then when I'm in my coaching mode with people that are in my coaching program, I definitely tap into them. I think we all do that naturally. I really tap into their energy and in service of them delivering what they need in their journey of learning TYA and making themselves a TYA practitioner. That I do that. So that's about as medium as I really identify with. I have really good friends that are psychic mediums that's all they do, and tap into that. I just don't necessarily feel that that's my place here. I think all channels. I absolutely believe that Esther is channeling source. It's so on point with what I get. I just think that because we evolve, and because Esther came along and was comfortable with saying, well, Abraham is a group of non-physical entities, that was her comfort level when she started channeling that. And that's worked very well for her. And the audience loves it. She loves it. Everyone identifies that energy now as Abraham. I believe Abraham is source. And I believe that anyone that is authentically channeling, and I'm not here to judge whether someone is authentic or not, is tapping into source. Source, and the way that I describe source, and it's to know that you're channeling source. Source does not have judgment. Source is authentic appreciation of everything, all things. So when I'm tapped into that energy, and it does feel like a powerful, creative, even loving energy, and it is appreciation of all things. And as human beings, we have an ego, and our egos discern preference. So it's challenging for us to think in terms of really appreciating all things. What about XYZ? I hear that every day on social media. Well, how can I appreciate Gaza and pedophilia and all these things? Well, when I tap into source, I do understand what that means. It doesn't mean celebration. It doesn't mean, oh, this stuff's great, do more. It simply means deep understanding that from the eternal perspective, these are all just human qualities and activities and manifestations that we're having here in this temporary environment. And there's no right or wrong from the source perspective. That doesn't mean that we can't discern preference as human beings with our ego, that we would rather experience this and not that. That's the function of ego, right? So that duality of ego and source creates the physical experience. But if you're channeling source, there's no real guidance to anything specific as in terms of choices or outcomes. So people will say, well, source guided me to do this and not do that. Well, that may be a very high vibration, source aligned opinion that your ego made. And we know that our ego can make a great decisions up our spiral, but down our spiral is not so good, right? So there's still some human peppered in there. And somebody will say, well, this channel told us that we should avoid XYZ. And the stream will say, we're not saying avoid anything. Whatever you experience is an expansive experience for your being, and there's no wrong in your lifetime. You could be a junkie overdosing under an underpass somewhere, and the human mind will judge that as should not be, but source is not judging it that way. And that's very difficult for people to comprehend sometimes. On to something
That's
else.
fantastic. Okay. Well, all right. So I would love to move into, can you explain your specific process briefly, and then we'll take a break, and then after that, we will have a channel session if that's okay with you.
Certainly.
I would love to know, now that I know Trust Your Abundance, TYA.
Yeah.
TYA is
Well, I will tell you quickly, the reason TYA is called TYA is because all of the study that I've done throughout my 56 years of life, I have come to understand that trust is the most important word that we have, because religions call it faith. It's really the same thing. Trusting, because we're on this vibrational journey up and down. So we never just stay up all the time. There's just no such thing as that. So we're going to go down. We're going to manifest problems in our lives. That's part of why we're here. But we can trust when we're down that we're going to go back up. And we can trust when things are unraveling that they're going to come back together, probably even in a more brilliant way for us if we simply allow that. So often we get discouraged and give up on things when we don't really need to do that. We just need to let the storm come through, let it pass, and then let the forest reemerge as a better version of itself, right? So that's why TYA is about trust, because I have learned to trust. And I still manifest scenarios where I have to move through trust that the light is at the end of the tunnel. We don't stop doing that as humans as long as we're here.
Agreed. And sometimes the trust this is why I'm the reluctant medium, right? Because I was told by my grandmother on the other side that I'd be doing this work. And I'm like, no, I'm not. She's like, yes, you are. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. There's this argument back and forth. And I finally leaned into the discomfort of doing something like this when I'm a psychotherapist, very Western trained, logical, linear science.
I'm in a relationship with a psychologist, by the way. Live with one. So it's a very interesting conversation every evening over dinner for sure. And every morning over coffee.
I would love to be a fly on the wall, please. May I? I'm just
Absolutely.
kidding. So great. Okay. So do tell, what is briefly the TYA process?
So I was very inspired by Abraham, as I said, and then I wanted to really, because there was also some frustrations there for me that I don't have to get too deep into, because I think Abraham is brilliant for the audience that is there. But for me, it was sort of like, okay, I've taken this as far as I can go, but there's more that isn't part of this message. So what is out there? And I was very guided by the stream to just don't worry about that, appreciate Esther for exactly what Abraham is, and let this become its own thing. Well, little did I know that I was creating a mindset practice that I had actually created for myself that I was going to start teaching to the world. And so I left the corporate job, started the podcast, had an unpublished book, had no idea how I was going to make a living. I met someone very serendipitously who teaches you how to do an online course. And in the beginning, I thought, well, I'm not going to do an online course. I'm going to do workshops. What are you talking about? And then I was very guided that, no, this is your path lining up. You're not the next Esther. You're going to do this way, and then it's all going to unfold from there. So I started teaching this course, and the course is all channeled. So what we now call TYA Bootcamp is this channeled course. And it's how I started a business and how I'm able to do this full time now, that I teach this mindset process to other people. And then in teaching it to other people over the years, it really fleshed out. The name came about, the 4 pillars of TYA came about. And it works for people. People that complete my program have these massive changes in their lives. And the more you practice, the better it gets. So that's where it came from. It's the practical application of the stream's teachings. Everything they teach, this sums it up in a way that you can now go apply it. Well, guess what? I said something earlier that I try not to say, but I'm an open book about being frustrated with Abraham. That was my only frustration with Abraham, because I saw a lot of people sitting in the Abraham hot seat asking the same questions over and over and over again, realizing that this stuff is brilliant, but how in the hell do you really make it your way of life? That was my frustration. I didn't set out to create a course or a mindset practice. I set out just to share the stream, because I knew there was a lot more about polarity and stuff like that is in the stream's message, and about why down is good, not this, just be happy all the time stuff. You've got to go through your downtime. There's a lot of value in that. So
great.
So it just happened, and it happened in very short order. I would say in the first 6 months of 2018, I went from teaching a little 8-week course that was channeled to fleshing out an entire mindset practice. That then I started writing the TYA book that just got published last year. And my boot camp became this incubator for the process. And I was frustrated because my boot camp is not an inexpensive thing to take. I want to make it affordable, but it's also a huge time commitment on my part, so I can only make it so affordable, right? but I do want to teach it to the world, whether they can afford my boot camp right now or not. So that's where the book came from. And I teach it everywhere. So I don't hold anything back in my teachings of TYA. The book will tell you all of it. The boot camp is more the mediumship part, like you mentioned. It's more tapping into your specific root transgressors and healing those things, because that really transforms your life.
My goodness sake, this sounds like truly like therapy.
Well, and again, it's I don't think it's a coincidence that after I started my boot camp, I was single and met someone who is a psychologist who contributes now. I do not claim to be a practicing psychologist. I'm very clear. I'm self-educated. My formal education stopped at grade 10. I was not a good student. I had a great time in high school, but I was not a good student. And I am self-taught, but I do not claim to be a mental health professional, nor do I claim this is a mental health program. If somebody is on mental health, some sort of medication or therapy, we say, do not stop that to go do this. I am not that type of spiritual teacher where I think you need to, set all that stuff aside, because I don't know what someone's personal belief system is. And I'm telling them to stop something that might be helping them to do my thing.
Mm-mm.
My thing can enhance that. My thing can absolutely work for anyone, but it depends on how much power you give to it, because the power is within the student.
Always, always, always.
And my
Quite
partner, Michael, who is the
empowering.
psychologist, has the same belief system, that he doesn't care if it's, what type of treatment someone's getting. If they're getting the help they need, there's no one path for anyone. So we're very much in alignment that way. And he's open to all of this stuff. He's just he's not as deep into practicing it as I am, certainly. And nor do I need him to be.
Well, that's a perfect combination then, isn't it?
Yeah. The last thing I want is to live with someone that wants to dial up the stream. I have a friend that's like that. Every time we meet, can I talk to the stream? And I love that. But he's in Australia and we do that on the podcast, and that's great. But I would not want to live in a situation with someone who is like a stream groupie, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to the stream. Can you channel right now? I'm like, geez, no.
Oh,
We don't have that situation. It's good for me.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
You just get to be a human sometimes. Wow.
It's fun to be a human sometimes.
It is. And sometimes it's not. And that's also useful.
Yes.
Yes.
Indeed.
I love that. I love it. Okay. Thank you, David, for sharing that. I'd love to take a brief break. And on the other side, if we can see what channeling is like with you.
Let's
is that
do
cool?
it.
Okay. Okay. Welcome back, everyone, to The Reluctant Medium. We are talking to David Strickel, who is at is it streamofdavid.com?
TheStreamofDavid.com.
TheStreamofDavid.com. And you have a podcast, The Stream of David Podcast. And we are going to do a channeling session. Well, not me. The source is going to channel through David. And we get to experience that and see what that's like. And I'll just pop in and ask some questions as they come to my awareness, if that's okay.
Certainly.
Okay.
So when I channel, I get quiet for a moment. I'll do a little bit of breath work. I set the intention for them to come in. The intention was already set before we started. So I'm sort of already warmed up for it, if you will. And there'll be a little bit of silence. I do invite everyone that's watching, regardless of how far in the future you may be watching a recorded episode, to meditate with us. And that will summon the stream, no matter when you're doing it. And also summon what you need from the stream to receive. So I will get quiet. I'll do a little breath work. When they arrive, they always say, "We are here." And then you can just take over and start asking questions.
Perfect.
Yeah, we don't have a set. Most people that channel, they have sort of a preamble that sort of warms it up. I don't really care to do that. I would rather the interviewer just ask questions. You're curious. I'm sure you have things you want to ask. I'm fine just doing "We are here," and you jump in, ask questions, and go from there and follow your lead.
Wonderful.
Great. Let's do it.
Okay.
We are here.
Welcome. So delighted to have you here. Thank you for being here with us today. I am curious about your wisdom around You probably know that I do work with spirit babies specifically, and I am curious about the souls who are making their way to the planet now.
Understand that when you speak of souls, we speak in terms of strands of source consciousness. Anyone or anything that you consider a soul is truly a strand of that which we are. And the reason that these strands of consciousness manifest in physical form is to come to a polarized environment for the sole purpose, SOLE, of expansion of consciousness. The expansion of consciousness journey expands what you call source, which expands the entire universe. And when we speak of expansion, we are referring to becoming a more dense, in terms of energy, more sophisticated version of what we are. We are guaranteed expansion. There is no such thing as a possibility of source not expanding. So the expansion is guaranteed, but the expansion is achieved in non-physical or energetic, the energetic realm, visiting non-physical environments. So when we say visit, we are referring to a temporary experience where that which you call source is expressing itself in strands of consciousness, sort of like breaking off in little chunks of itself, flowing into a physical environment with an intentionality for a specific type of expansion or a level of expansion. So the environment is its own unique vibration. So the earth environment is unique from all other environments. And in terms of physical environments, they're indeed infinite. So beyond your human grasp. So the earth environment is going to deliver a very specific, unique earthly experience. And a strand of consciousness will choose to move through different levels of physical manifestation in a specific environment to fully realize that environment, meaning being the most basic life form that you can imagine, all the way to the most sophisticated life form. The most sophisticated life form on your planet, beyond the planet or the environment itself, is humanity. So as you flow into a human life form, and this is what you were referring to when you say soul, the object is not necessarily to come and have a joyful, easy life. In fact, a soul that is what you might refer to as newer to humanity would probably choose the easier path to simply ready itself for an experience of moving through multiple lifetimes as a human being. The soul that is looking for greater expansion is going to choose the higher degree of experience, meaning more difficulty in your minds. So the soul that is moving into an experience that is more apt to danger, that is more apt to be unhealthy in some way, or more apt to be abused in some way, or marginalized in some way, that is a more advanced being projecting in for that experience. Understand that your human experience, you tend to think of it, those of you that are into what you call spirituality, you tend to think of the human experience as something that is already laid out, that everything that has ever happened and everything that is ever going to happen and has happened in the past is happening simultaneously. And it is true that the energetic realm is consciousness, so there is no linear time. There's no physical aspect to it. There's no movement of planets or any of the things that create time for you. The heightened sophistication, however, is new creation, but it's not linear. So this heightened sophistication, once you experience it, is now created both forward and backward. It's eternal. So it's not linear, but it is more sophisticated. So to achieve a higher degree of sophistication, you are going to come and project yourself into, vibrationally as an alignment, into a higher degree of chance, meaning that you are going to choose a parent who physically may not be ready to even give birth. So you come and have the more sophisticated experience of being a stillborn fetus or aborted or something else of that nature. And the very best example that we can give you, because many of you are listening to this and this is beginning to boggle your minds a bit because it's very different than how many of you tend to think. Think of the young children that are born with terminal illness. And how often do you hear these stories of how special that child was while they were here? How evolved they were, what an old soul they were. That is not off base. You are experiencing a soul that has experienced Earth many times, even as a human being, that is now choosing this more challenging journey for the depth of experience that's offered in it. And the humans that are involved in the co-creation of this experience can have an experience where they are actually uplifted in the having of it. And you have seen examples of that she came and she was special and she lit our lives and we will cherish her forever. Or it can go the other way because you are in this, again, this environment of chance where your ego is taking over, overshadowing our consciousness and discerning preferences. Humanity has created a matrix of beliefs. We refer to this as the matrix. It is simply the collective belief system that humanity has created for itself. This matrix of beliefs that focuses very heavily on right and wrong, and that anything that is deemed wrong simply should not be. And this has taken you on a journey of expansion in physical. This physical expansion journey has created many things that you all enjoy now. Much of your modern technology, your family structures, your educational structures, all of the structure that you have created for yourselves, you have created in separation from source. Mm. And we are not judging it. Your separation from us is what expands your consciousness and thus expands our consciousness. So we are not judging it at all. But we are here pointing out that you are at a very interesting crossroads for humanity because you are becoming wiser beings. You are becoming more aware of polarity. You're becoming more aware of what you might call spirituality. You're becoming more aware of what is human created and what might not be human created. And you're starting to discern those distinctions. And at the same time that you're doing this, your intelligence is also leading you to create technology that is very much like the technology that creates you. Artificial intelligence, robotics, all of these things that you're creating. And the disruption in this path of control that humanity has created is creating further disruption in your financial systems. You're creating AI now that is going to unemploy many of you. You're creating a scenario where you will leave yourselves no choice but to trust. But to trust that humanity is not destroying the earth environment, that humanity is nowhere near destroying itself. Eventually, all physical environments will morph into something else, certainly. But Earth is not there in its journey at this time, and humanity is certainly not there in its journey. You are simply at this time where many of you are choosing to step out of this matrix, at least temporarily. And while you're choosing to step out of the matrix being an energetic being itself, is reasserting itself. More division, more fear, more things to fear. And you are seeing other humans move deeper into the matrix. The way that you can tell that you are out of the matrix is when you are detuning judgment, detuning fear, no longer needing to be polarized, no longer needing to have a specific one-sided opinion about anything. You are operating outside the matrix. That is a very source-like way of being. Whereas when you believe that you have this set of identities or beliefs that are hard and fast and you must adhere to them, and then anyone that doesn't believe in those are a threat to you somehow, that's polarity. You are moving more into the matrix and more into ego when you are operating your life in those belief systems. There is nothing wrong with any of this. The entire spectrum of belief systems is what is required for humanity to achieve this level of expansion that you are now achieving. So we are not judging any of it. But for those of you that are listening to our teachings and teachings like these, we are flowing through other teachers beyond David, certainly. Understand that the way that humanity has created its belief system, its matrix, operates in reverse of universal law, believing that you must see something in order to believe it, that something must first manifest for you to believe that it's yours or to believe that it is. Whereas we are here to tell you that all creation is a creation of consciousness first. So that which you believe, you receive. You have all heard these words before. So moving yourselves out of this matrix places you out into sort of a wilderness. And this wilderness can be a frightening place, and you can be frightened right back into the matrix with ease in your environment. But going back to the new souls and what they are projecting into, understand that all of this expansion of consciousness, all of this evolution of thought that humanity has created for itself, the ones that are projecting in now are projecting in to this new vibration that you're all creating together. This is why your younger generations, in some ways, are more sophisticated in their beliefs than their parents and grandparents. You see evidence of that all around you. Even though they might not have the wisdom of a lifetime on their side, and from an ego perspective, they are projecting in not wanting to be part of the matrix. Notice that. Notice that they don't necessarily want to adhere to the matrix beliefs, the formal education system, the religions of your world. Even gender identity is in question now. Borders, government, policing, what are you not questioning? And you are seeing the younger generation projecting in up to speed with that. So you are seeing a lot of evidence of all of the things that we are sharing with you. And we are not necessarily here to predict or guide you to a specific future, but we are here to provide clarity on where you are and where you can go.
Oh my goodness. Where I can go in this interview with only a few minutes left. Oh my gosh, there's so much I want to know. Can we have 10 more hours with you? Okay.
We are here for whomever, whenever. It is up to David to decide to make himself available, but he indeed loves sharing this.
I would imagine David would need to take a restroom break at some point in the 10 hours or something, but folks can go listen to the Stream of David podcast and read his book and all that. But I have one more question, if you're able to answer in as brief an amount of time as possible that we have. I'm curious about offering folks, knowing that we come from source, knowing that we choose our parents, we choose our life circumstances, or at least the energy around it. I'm not sure about the specifics, but when there are things that occur, like giant things like Adolf Hitler or wars or genocide, or even, on a smaller scale, but still quite painful, being somebody who is a perpetrator of rape or etc. How do we explain that to people how is that divine? How is that meant to be, so to speak?
We view your being as eternal, as an extension of that which we are, and we are eternal. We view you that way. The human version of you is a temporary thing that you are experiencing, that in your myriad experiences is like a grain of sand in an ocean of experiences. Literally, it is. So we view you as your eternal selves, having infinite physical experiences, in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. And of course, the in and out is not a linear experience. They are all happening simultaneously because it's not linear. But every experience reverberates through eternity to make the strand of consciousness a more sophisticated version of itself. So you have all experienced everything that you could possibly imagine. You have all been victims of everything that you can imagine being victimized by in your lifetimes, in your experiences. You all have. So if this is happening to all of you eternally, and you allow yourself to play a little bit, and where we would guide you is not to try to think of the most horrific thing as an exercise and imagine yourself appreciating that as we do, because you're going to fail at that. You're sabotaging yourselves when you do that, because you have spent a lifetime thinking the other way. So you have created great energy, great momentum in your judgments of things. And we are not telling you to not do that. We are not guiding you to any specific belief. We are not even guiding you to believe what we share. That is completely up to you. This is not a gospel that you must adhere to. We are not seeking to be worshiped or obeyed in any way. We have said many times, we are the source of all creation. Why would we need you to do that? What we quote unquote need you to do is expand your consciousness, and that's guaranteed in your experience. So in order to create an ecosystem such as Earth, notice how Earth operates. Earth feeds itself. Earth is a self-sustaining environment. You all eat one another, essentially. And in order for that to happen, you are going to have this spectrum of behaviors and spectrum of beliefs. And you are going to have within the spectrum everything from the most horrific being that you could possibly imagine, that is absolutely all about harming others, to the most benevolent being that is all about loving and caring for others. And you're going to have everything in between. And since you're all vibrational beings, you are all versions of that at different times. So if you are judging the murderer in this lifetime, understanding that you have been the murderer in another. And we're not guiding you to judge yourselves for that. We understand that many of you are hearing these words thinking, I could never do that. My soul would never do that. My soul is divine. My soul is of source. Yet so are the souls that are doing the things that you're judging. So this is a mindset that will absolutely be very freeing for you if you choose to follow it, but the choice is completely yours. You know of your readiness for this or not. So if you're not ready for this, understand that there's nothing wrong with not following this and believing in this. But if you're curious and you want to learn more, David is spending the rest of his lifetime sharing this. And the intent behind the sharing of it is not to make all of you murderers. It's to come to understand that anything that you judge, that judgment is reverberating out into humanity and creating more of whatever you're judging. This is the turning point part. This is the more sophistication part that we speak of, because a lot of these things that you do not appreciate as human beings within your ego consciousness can be solved. In fact, anything can be solved. We are the solving, healing energy of all things. We are creative power. So if you discern a preference collectively to solve something, understand that you have spent millennia judging and pushing against things that persist. So now you're becoming more sophisticated versions of yourself. And what do you learn in that? You learn that whatever you focus on, you're feeding in your lives and across humanity. So the judgment of something is not solving it. The judgment of something that you do not prefer is not going to heal it or solve it or stop it. In fact, the highly charged energy of judgment is often fueling more of it. So when you are judging something as should not be, that already is or has been, that energy is doing nothing but creating more. You're perpetuating more of it. And that is the key message here, that it is impossible for you at this time, with the amount of information that you possess, that you've created all of this technology for, to run and bury your heads in the sand and pretend like something isn't happening. You can't ignore it. So if you're seeing something that you deem unwanted happening in your life and you cannot possibly ignore it, nor are we asking you to, how do you detune the power around it? You detune the power around it by viewing it as we do, with a deeper level of understanding of it. And when you understand something, you don't need to harshly judge it anymore. Notice the things that are harshly judged are also highly misunderstood. You judge the murderer, you judge the pedophile, you judge the rapist, but rarely do you seek to go beyond judgment and understanding what creates that. The understanding of what creates it is certainly a more sophisticated way of viewing it. We are not asking you to celebrate any of these things. We are not asking you to invite more of these things. We are not asking you to turn a blind eye. If something is happening in front of you and you wish to intervene, to be the savior, understand that that's your ego at play, but there's nothing wrong with that. But this solving of it, the solving power is in the deep understanding of it, so deep that you no longer judge it. And understanding that the should not be label for something that already is useless energy in terms of solving and healing.
My goodness. Well, thank you so much. I am pointing folks to the Stream of David podcast, as well as the website and books. All of that will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here today and for offering this beautiful, beautiful wisdom. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining the Reluctant Medium podcast today. I hope you found this episode helpful. You can connect with me at thereluctantmedium.us, where you can find lots of free content as well as readings. All links are also in the show notes. Thanks so much again for joining today. I will see you next time.